Okay. The big clock on the wall says it's 1 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to December 6th regular meeting of council. The city of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. Number 1 is the consent agenda for the minutes for 3 different meetings. I need a mover and a seconder for the moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor O'Brien. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Correspondence. We have one from the Assistant Deputy Minister and Inspector of Municipalities. Update on the public consultation and community engagement on a proposed multiplex project. I need a mover and a seconder for it to be received. Did I? I'm sorry, no, I've got page 2, page 3. It's from the Assistant Deputy Minister and Inspector of Municipalities. Okay, and that's what we're on right now. And it's a piece of correspondence. I have nothing on code of conduct in my notes. You're confusing me now. It doesn't take much, but you are confusing me. All right, we are on the correspondence from Tara Faganello, Assistant Deputy Minister and Inspector of Municipalities regarding Bill 26. I need a mover and a seconder for it to be received. Moved by Councillor Greer, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence from D. Nichol, the excessive exterior residential lighting. I need a mover and a seconder to receive. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Keep them moving right along. Bowinn Ma, Minister of State for Infrastructure, UBCM meeting 2021. I had that put in just for everybody's update on where we were at. I need a mover and a seconder to be received. Moved by Councillor Greer, second by Councillor Wilson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Growth Strategy minor amendment for 1329, 1333, and 1340 Kipp Road. I need a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by, I need a seconder, Councillor Greer. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Reports. Mr. Russell, we have you ready to make your report, your first one.
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship, hopefully you can hear me here. For council consideration this afternoon, this is the follow-up report for a development variance permit and development permit to facilitate a mixed-use commercial multi-unit residential building at 113 Hirst Avenue East. Since this was last presented to council, required notification has now occurred. As of this morning, no correspondence have been received with respect to this development variance permit. This will enable council this afternoon to consider issuance of the development variance permit and the corresponding development permit per the recommendations of the agenda.
Thank you. Before I have a mover and a seconder, is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I will need a mover and a seconder for recommendations. Moved by Councillor Wilson, second by Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? No discussion? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Russell.
If I may, Your Worship, this is a follow-up report for a development variance permit and development permit to facilitate a small lot residential subdivision, as well as a retaining wall and fence in combination on the subject property at 331 and 343 Moilliet Street South. As of today, 2 correspondence have been received, one from an adjacent property owner in partial opposition to the variance with some suggested compromise, as well as a response from the proponent with their understanding of how they have addressed the concerns. So the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you. I need to, first off, before we begin, if there's anybody here that in the audience that would like to speak to this matter. Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Greer. Discussion, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question would be perhaps to Michelle Jones, if through you, if I could, just to, no, I can't, sorry. Well, then I guess.
Bring it to us and we'll take it to
all right.
The director.
So then it's just whether or not there's been a solution worked out between the two parties and they're all in agreement. It sounds like it is, but I'm just wondering.
That's a valid question.
Thank you.
Mr. Russell, you've received both pieces of correspondence. Do you want to just give us a brief overlay of what you anticipated as being?
So the adjacent property owner that has some reservations about the requested variance appears to indicate that a maximum height of 2.5 meters combined would be acceptable to them. They further go on to express concerns with respect to where the retaining wall is 0.91 meters or less, that the fence be no greater than 1.8 meters. The proponent has responded with correspondence indicating that the intent is that no point in time would the fence be over 6 feet in height installed. This would be 1.83 meters for the record. And then basically where the exposed retaining wall is a meter or higher, that the maximum height that they would propose would be 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Staff will provide some clarification on the bylaw and the variance, just so council is aware of what those differences are. Under the zoning bylaw, the maximum combined height of fences and retaining walls in proximity to each other is 2 meters or 6.56 feet. In no case can any fence be higher than 2 meters under the zoning bylaw normally, which is 6.56 feet. And in no case can a retaining wall be higher than 1.0 meters or 3.28 feet. In the case of the variance that's being requested, the only change is to the combined height, where in combination, the total height could be up to 3 meters or 9.84 feet. Fences would still be restricted to a maximum on their own of 2 meters, and retaining walls would also be restricted under the normal bylaw requirements of 1.0 meters.
Thank you. Any questions, any discussion? Councillor Wilson has the same look of puzzlement that I have, and as I expressed to Mr. Russell earlier this morning, why in the heck can't we just say that the total shouldn't come more than 6.5 feet, no matter which one is which, and just live with that number or whatever the number we pick. And I know that's what it says in a roundabout way, but it certainly takes a lot of words to say that.
So I think there's to maybe provide a couple. So under the zoning bylaw, it already says that without a variance, it basically says 6.5 feet regardless of how you slice or dice it. The requested variance of 3 meters, it would obviously allow for a 6.5 foot fence on up to a 1 meter retaining wall. What the neighbor appears to have suggested is a 2.5 meter height. Depending on how you slice and dice this in certain combinations, if you have 2.5 meters is the maximum, you could have a 6 foot fence on a 2 foot retaining wall. Under that same scenario of 2.5 meters, you could have a 5 foot fence on a 3 foot retaining wall. So sort of splitting it in the middle between 3 meters and 2 meters, 2.5 meters. it is certainly an option that council could look at if it's not satisfied with the 3-meter request.
Councillor Wilson, I don't see any other hands, so please feel free.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess for me, 9.83 feet is pretty high. And so I guess I wondered what the other side of the property, how high that fence is. And you have to remember this fence is black too. So that's going to look like a pretty solid black wall bearing down on the adjacent property, as well as even the people who are going to be living at 331, 343 Moilliet. So my sense would be 2.5 meters seems like a reasonable compromise.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Russell, we're close on satisfying everybody's request at 2.5 meters, right? I'm getting a nod at the back of the room, by the way, so yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
So if that's what council wished to do, then it would be to issue the permit amended to be 2.5 meters rather than 3 meters.
so we need to amend the motion that's on the floor then at this point in time. So I need somebody to make that amendment. Councillor Wilson?
Sure, I can make
2.5
that.
meters?
Yes, I'll make that amendment. Do I have to make it formally or is our CAO going to just do that for us? I would, so I
Do
would.
it. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship, it should be formal, moved and seconded, and then we would call the question as amended.
Yes,
That would
yes,
be-
that's fine. So you're doing it as an amendment. I need a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Greer. Discussion. Councillor Fraz.
Through our mayor to director of planning there, is the, so 2.5 meters, is that going to, that's the combined height? But one of the expressed concerns here is that when the retaining wall is of a smaller portion, allows for that a larger fence. But you're saying that, if I understand this correctly, that the fence would not be allowed to go over the 2 meters height, regardless of combined height. So it doesn't allow for it to become a 2.5 meter fence. It's only 2.5 meters if it's achieved through a 2 meter fence with a 0.5 meter of retaining wall.
If I may, worship to the council, Adam Fraz, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in the comment? So we're talking about the amendment. You need to need a vote on just the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to 2.5 meters. That's carried. All right, now we're voting on the amended motion. Anybody have any comments on this? I only have one comment. I think that, we've had a couple of issues recently where we're starting to get up to that 8, 9, and 10 feet. I don't have a problem when it's abutting onto like the backyard of this particular property, when it butts onto the, a public area, and I can understand that. But when it's between two residential pieces of property, I have a real concern about having a Great Wall of China between the two pieces of property. So I think we need to look at this in a little bit more detail at some point in time in the future, only because, we 6 feet is kind of what we've always said is what we wanted for fencing. And here we are, whether it's a fence or a retaining wall or a combination thereof, it should be still at the same height when we're done. That would be my thought on this, but I'll support this motion as it is. Councillor Fraz.
Through our mayor to director of planning again, these properties, do they have difference in elevations?
If I may, worship through to councillor Fraz, they will have difference in elevation as a result of grading necessary to facilitate site drainage as part of the subdivision.
Thank you. And sorry, I
Go
should
ahead.
ask for clarity too. Is this retaining wall then going to be serving that purpose as a retaining wall for the higher elevation of this developed property?
Yes.
Is that correct? Or is this retaining wall more acting as just a larger fence?
If I may, worship through to councillor Fraz, it's my understanding that it's specifically to increase the grade on the property that's under development to facilitate sort of directing surface flows towards the road, catch basin, et cetera.
Thank you.
All right. There's no, Councillor Patterson, sorry, I didn't see your hand up there.
Thank you. Just because it came in at late notice, the two correspondence, the one in regards from Neil Moss, Maudsley. And that shows a picture and it shows where the retaining wall changes in variation of height for the wall and for the drainage and that. So I like pictures. I think it makes more sense that way,
I'm with
just
you
to
on
bring
that,
it
by the way.
forward.
All right. Any other discussion? I think I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amended motion? Carried. Thank you. We still have you up, Mr. Russell.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this afternoon is the introduction of a proposal to rezone the property at 1222 Industrial Way, zoning file number PZN 036. This application, if approved, will essentially normalize the CD zone on the property with the standard industrial zoning that's on both sides of the property. In this case, it will ultimately facilitate a business that is intended to be a railing manufacturer within the existing building premises. At some point in the future, they've indicated they may include a powder coating facility in a separate building. That would require a separate development permit should that occur. So essentially, it's, as I said, just normalizing the zoning with the surrounding zone. The property used to have industrial zoning. They specifically changed that at some point to facilitate a gym. The city then at some point decided that gyms were great and it put it in the standard industrial zone. So it's sort of being left with this custom orphan zone, and this process would put it back in order. With the respect to the recommendations in the agenda, the proponent was unable to attend today. Per council policy that requires a presentation prior to commencement of the statutory process. Staff are going to request that the first reading of the zoning bylaw be deferred till the time that we do second reading. This will allow the proponent to go ahead with their public consultation. And then when we come back with the follow-up report, we would be in a position to do first and second reading at the same time. This will have no impact on the timelines of this application, but it will allow the proponent an opportunity to present to council and as well be consistent with policy 431. And so at this time, I'm asking that a modified recommendation be approved to receive the report and to have the proponent proceed with their public engagement, but that the zoning bylaw that appears on the zoning bylaw section of today's agenda be deferred to a future date when the second reading is also being considered.
Councillor Chandler, are you moving the motions?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. I need a seconder. Councillor O'Brien. Just a point of clarification for me. Is it policy? Is it in the bylaws that they have to make a presentation?
If I may, Your Worship, it's in a council adopted policy, not necessarily this council, but
Okay.
a council's adopted policy that prior to the commencement of the statutory process for zoning bylaw amendment applications, that a presentation be made before council. In most cases, it seems warranted, but in some of these more minor lateral changes, it's, yeah.
All right.
It is what it is.
In 3 years so far, it's the first time I've come across it, so I was curious on this. Can we bypass it? I'm not trying to get around, I'm just asking. I mean, why do we want to complicate this process any further?
If I may, Your Worship, I believe staff have provided recommendations that simplify the process, that there's no timeline impact. It just means that rather than doing second reading on its own, we'd now be considered first and second at the same time. So I think it's pretty neutral. But.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussions? I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed, and it's carried. Thank you.
If I may, Your Worship, for council consideration this afternoon is the consideration of a development permit at 345 Sutherland Place. This permit may look somewhat familiar in that the property owner is looking to issue a development permit to facilitate a dwelling on the property. They had attempted to, under their previous permit, to do renos to an existing house, just due to the seismic challenges, and in order to beef up the foundation of the building, they weren't able to proceed with just adding additions onto the existing dwelling. As a result, they're now proposing to build a new dwelling. Style-wise, it's very similar to what was proposed previously. The new dwelling will be slightly further back from the top of bank. There's professional reports, geotech report, biologist report. Those have been incorporated into the development permit as terms of permit. So the recommendation is per the agenda to consider issuance of the development permit.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor O'Brien, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our Director of Planning, just have a quick question to about whether or not, and I may have asked this before for this property, would the city be in any way liable if there were a landslide or flooding, given all of the events of late on a property like this? Thank you.
Certainly, if I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, I'm not a solicitor, so I can't speak definitively with respect to liability, but my experience would be that anytime a municipality issues building permits in an area where there are hazards, the municipality may action may be taken against a municipality. Whether or not it'll be successful or not, I don't know. But that's part of why we have established these development permit areas. We can't sanitize someone's property, so they can't use it for a legitimate purpose. And so as part of our processes, we have development permit areas where we have professional expertise to essentially sign off and take on some of that risk through their through having an engineer stamp the foundation and a geotechnical report.
Councillor Wilson, follow up.
Please, thank you. So would a covenant on the property to protect the city help?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, there actually is a covenant on title. It is also carried over as a term in this permit, but that geotech report was registered as part of the last development permit, and it has a limited liability clause built into it. And this permit just reiterates that same parameter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting this for the reasons that I'm pretty confident from what I've seen from the geotech reports and all the rest of the background information on this, that I believe the applicant has gone over and above to try and make this appropriate for building on the sea bluffs there, anyways, along Sutherland there. The other thing is that they've also recommended that there's been for landscaping, that there's been no altering of the existing plants and trees and so forth on the bank, so to stabilize it even further, which I was appreciative of. Anyways, they recognize the value of that. So I feel that the applicant has done his due diligence in this particular case.
Thank you. Anybody else? I too will be supporting this. I think we're in a better position from a liability factor, if nothing else, because they're moving the building back out further away from the bank than what was going to be done. Plus, they're eliminating a few other variances and minor changes that they were going to have to do because of the using the existing building. So I don't see any reason not to do this. This is a much better situation for the resident himself or themselves, and also for the city. So I'm in total support of this. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to say, I was always in support of this. It's just that I wanted to ask those questions. And I also want to say that this has been an unfortunate circumstance for this owner. So I wish them well and hope that this will work out for them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? Then we'll call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Now we're going to hear about the Parksville Community Park Stormwater Management Master Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this report. The purpose of my report is to seek council's approval of the Parksville Community Park Stormwater Management Master Plan that was completed earlier this year. This project's been in the works for a couple of years now, and I'm hoping to bring it to close with a favorable resolution today. This report has come forward to council as a requirement of the FCM grant funding agreement. I've read through the report a couple times now to familiarize myself with it. That doesn't include all the appendices, I may say. The information contained within it has value. A considerable amount of effort has gone into its creation. If there are technical questions related to the report, I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't know the answer, I'm committed to getting you the information you're seeking. Stormwater management has evolved over the past couple decades. Older thinking was to treat stormwater as a nuisance that should be dealt with as quickly as possible through a network of increasingly larger pipes all the way to the outfall, and in our case, to the ocean. Today's approach to runoff that continues to evolve is to treat rainwater as a resource that should be retained, stored, and reused where possible. This report provides staff with a plan to deal with stormwater in the park in a way that upholds the principles of treating rainwater as a resource. It does this by separating the park into different rainfall catchment areas. Projects are identified within each area that can be undertaken over a period of time that improve the overall stormwater management in the park. Recommendations are as per the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Greer. Discussion. Anybody having? Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and for the presentation. Thank you very much. I just, the quick question about this report. Has it ever been presented to council? Like there was nothing in the background information regarding the stormwater master plan, and it refers to the report, but I remember okaying and approving it, but has the completed report ever been presented to council?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor O'Brien. I don't believe it has come before council as a technical report in its entirety. If we were to do something like that, I would probably have the consultant that created the report either in the room or on Zoom to get into the nuts and bolts of it. So other than it being attached to your agenda, I don't think this has come forward.
If I
Councillor
may,
Kaler.
just to
Or
clarify,
Councillor- I'm sorry, CAO Kaler.
I would not want to do that. Anyway, so Sean obviously wasn't here. This has come to council a few times throughout the process, but the actual plan itself is completed now. So what Sean's report is introducing is the final plan for endorsement from council, but it has come to council a few different times. There was an initial grant application, and we then were able to get some additional funding through a modified or an amended grant, which council then approved that as well. So it expanded the scope, and I think we got about an additional, I'm going to say $125,000, give or take. So that work has been happening over the last few years, and this is now the final product. So that's what is coming before you today. So
As a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead, because I've got one for that
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
too. Go ahead.
Thank you for that, CEO Kaler. My question, I recognize the process, and I also appreciate of the fact that it could possibly qualify for a green, the green initiatives anyways because of stormwater management. But the thing is that I know it was quite extensive, and for council, I think it's important that we actually get to see this report, because I would expect over the next year and 2 years type of thing, we're going to be getting recommendations from staff to do the following things. I know Councillor Fraz and myself were on the Parks Committee at the time. We were working on this, and we were quite interested in the same time as being presented. And so I think it'd be very helpful if we had a look at it. I mean, it could be, I don't want to say dumb it down, but we can scale it down so that, the council can understand it and get some appreciation of what's involved, because we know that we had a problem in the community park, and we're very appreciative of the fact that staff are going to address that. So it's sometime in the future. All I'm saying, it would be great if we could have a look at that plan. That's my comment. Thank you.
Could it be just to follow up on that? Pardon me?
sorry, if I may, Your Worship, I'm just looking, can't speak. I believe our intent was to link the report because it is quite large. Is it linked in the agenda, Amanda? So if anyone has any trouble finding that, we can certainly send it again, but it is normally like with Blaine's reports, we attach the documents, but it's actually linked in a separate file, just like we did with a couple of other reports that were very extensive, like the feasibility study for the pool. So it is technically attached to the agenda, but just in an electronic format. So if anyone has any problems with that, we can resend it. The intent today was really to introduce it to you that way, and then we'll be looking into basically an implementation plan over the next few, well, probably 10 or so years in the capital planning process. But if anyone has any problems finding the link, we can certainly recirculate.
Just as a point of clarification, most of those updated meetings were prior to us being around the table, were they not? I don't remember us getting a lot.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, I think it came before this council twice.
Okay.
The first time was for the sort of smaller scale, and then the second time
Okay.
it was actually presented by Acting Director Doxy when there was an ability to get an expanded scope with more funding.
All right.
And that was what included the archaeological studies. If that rings a bell for council.
All right. I mean, I'm fine with it the way it is, but I'd like to know more about what it says, so I'll follow through. Councillor Patterson. I
Thank you,
didn't
Your
see that
Worship.
either, by the way.
That's all right. So this has been a lengthy project because we accepted grant funding of 163, and then we put it into the budget of the 2020, 2024. It came before council in 2019, and that's, so it's been quite a bit of ongoing work. So I'm questioning when in the recommendation is to seek grant funding, and I'm assuming that's with the green initiatives, but I'm not sure of when the end date of that is. And so therefore, I'm also wondering when a future report to council will be and when further work will be. Thank you. I'll direct that through the mayor to the CAO, to our director.
Director.
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. Coincidentally, there's an FCM grant that I believe closes January 26. It has a 5-year time frame, and it is for projects that improve stormwater quality. They're looking for applications that ideally can be phased. So this type of work lends itself well to that kind of grant application. As far as how quickly a report would come back to council, I was thinking maybe December 20th.
Okay. Councillor O'Brien. You started all of this.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Councillor Patterson just twigged on what I was referring to as well. Has this report actually been beneficial, like since we're already starting the outdoor performing arts theater in the park? And in fact, I see some pipe down there already. Has it been already beneficial to help us design drainage around the new construction that's about taking place there? Have we been able to use some of that information?
Oh, please.
If I may, Your Worship, I would say that it has been helpful in a few other ways as well. It certainly has helped us with some of the pickleball court issues. It's also been very beneficial to have the expanded scope with the archaeological studies. We've used that information like so many times. We use it for just normal irrigation maintenance, or anytime we're digging or doing new playground equipment or anything like that. So that has been very valuable. And it has helped us at a staff level build some connection with our neighboring nations as well. So that's been great. And it has helped with the outdoor stage, identifying some rock pit maintenance that has helped a little bit with the situation. We do still have more work to do there. And what staff are intending to do with this plan is essentially operationalize it so that each year we would identify the capital projects that are recommended. We may switch the order around based on other things we're doing in the park, or if something goes awry and we have to react. But that's where Director Bowinn is talking about identifying what we could apply for the grant that's available right now. And we anticipate that there will be multiple other grants kind of over a 10-year period, with the phasing, and some of these things do cost a bit of money. So we would then try to prioritize the areas that need it first and look at the overall budget and see where we can fit in the actual recommendations that they have attached in the report. Oh, and sorry if I may, Your Worship, the link is right before the signature blocks, in
Okay.
case people couldn't find it.
Thank you. I have to believe that the stormwater management master plans is probably a big topic of conversation in Victoria these days. So considering everything that's gone on in the past. So let's hope we can tie into some more of the grant money. All right, if we don't have anything else on this, I call the question. All those in favor of the recommendations? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is that his first time? Oh, we shouldn't have been that easy if that was the first time. I didn't realize that. Ms. Weeks, you have information regarding the COVID relief grant in aid program.
Yes, so the purpose of this report is to determine the allocation of the second COVID relief grant intake. The grant was for nonprofit groups providing social, cultural, and community support services in Parksville or serving Parksville residents for reimbursement of COVID-related expenses. We received 9 applicants in total, 8 by the Friday deadline and 1 the following Monday, and they're attached as Appendix 1 and the recommendations for the council agenda.
Need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Fraz, second by Councillor Wilson. Discussion? Councillor Fraz.
I guess beyond receiving this report here too, we should be looking at what we'll do with these applications. And my suggestion would be that we establish a grant and aid select committee, as we've done with other grant applications, for them to review it and make the recommendations to council. And if there's any other people that want to add some input to that, otherwise I'll make a motion for that.
Okay, are we in the received part now? Yes, we are.
We're just
So-
about receiving it right now. Okay.
Yeah, we'll receive, so we'll approve the receiving of the report, and then I'll be glad to hear your
Sure.
your
So
motion
I'll
at
just
that
put
point.
that
then.
out there for consideration
Okay.
after we receive it.
So
then.
just hold on for 30 seconds to that. And if we could, we'll call the vote on all those in favor of receiving the report. Opposed? It's carried. All right, now, Councillor Fraz, you want to make a motion, please?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to mention those thoughts here. I'll just open the floor if anyone else wanted to comment on it. Otherwise, that's the motion that I had in mind.
All right, make the motion, then we can talk about it.
All right, so I'll make a motion then that we establish a grant and aid select committee to review and make recommendations to council on the grant applications received.
Okay, I need it.
Sorry if I may, Your Worship. Is that intended to be full council participants or nominated members?
I think we can hear from councils how many they want for that committee. I don't think it
Yeah,
requires so much the full, otherwise we'd be in a committee the whole type of a situation, but I think, 2 to 3 people I think would suffice.
Okay, I need a seconder for that. Councillor O'Brien is seconding. Discussion. Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, and further on that, I agree that it would just be similar to the select committees that we use for the fall and spring grant and aids. I think 2 people would be adequate anyways, but I believe that this is the proper way of handling it. So I fully support this motion.
If I may ask a question, Your Worship, we do have a rotation of folks that are appointed to or basically go on those committees. It's sort of just whoever's turn is up next. Would council be okay with just following that process, and whoever's next up on the list would be on the committee? Or if not, you might want to make a motion after this one to recommend
All right,
individuals.
let's hold this one for the conversation, then we'll get to the next one if there is a part one. Councillor Greer?
I support this 100%, and I was going to suggest 3 people, but I like the idea of having the standing committee that rotates around each time for the grant and aid program. So I think that's a good idea.
Councillor Patterson, did you have your hand up? I didn't write it down. Go
No,
ahead.
I'll pass now. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to say, I agree with Councillor Greer. 3 people is probably a good mix to have on this. Thank you.
My only question would be is why don't we just use the same committee and just keep on going with that and just have them adjudicate for for the regular, for the $5,000 twice a year, and then for this one as well. That's only 2 people, right? Yeah, but
Sorry if I may, Your Worship. We usually rotate that around so that everyone has an opportunity to sit on one of those committees. But we could either use the same folks from the fall process, I can't remember who that was, or we do have people kind of up on deck for the spring. So that way it's just almost like an extension of their duties, either whether it's the fall group or the spring group.
I'm good at setting it either way as far as, but I just think from a simplistic point of view, having one committee doing all of these would be easier to know who to go to on it. Who sat on it in the fall? Mark and Carolyn sat on it. All right. So you're saying we change it again for spring? Who's scheduled? You'd have, okay. Oh, yeah, I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
What I might suggest is that if anyone's interested, to put their name forward to the mayor, and he can just select a couple people on this one. That way that people, if someone's not interested, they're not put onto it, and if people are, then they could.
We're only going to have this next one in the spring, and then come fall, we're not even going to be on it by that time, right?
If I may, Your Worship, just to kind of for ease of administrative process, it might be easy enough to just for the mover and seconder, which is Councillor Fraz and Councillor O'Brien, to make a slight adjustment that a select committee of folks who identified themselves to the mayor, and the mayor will choose 3. That way we don't have to do any more motions, and it'll just be that we'll
That's a
pick the
friendly,
next people.
that's a friendly amendment.
I think that's a great suggestion, so I'd like to make that amendment.
All right, and Councillor O'Brien, you're okay with that? We're all right? All right, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Mrs. Weeks, you're still going. You get all the good ones today.
Yeah. So under the provisions of the community charter and the city's procedure bylaw, the council meeting schedule for the upcoming year must be made available to the public prior to January 1st. Council meetings are held the 1st and 3rd Monday of each month. So we have continued with the 1 p.m. start time as directed by council back in October. To date, staff have not received any direct complaints or concerns regarding the altered meeting start time. It is important to note that special council meetings like budget meetings, public hearings may be scheduled at any time and do not need to be at 1 p.m. And the recommendations per council agenda.
I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Councillor Greer, Councillor Wilson. Discussion? So we're, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I wouldn't mind if this just stayed at 1 o'clock right through.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that's where we're at right now, unless we change it otherwise. So right now, the only time that we're outside of the 1st and 3rd Mondays is going to be January the 3rd, August the 3rd, and August the 15th. Those are the only 3 dates that the meetings will be canceled. Other than that, it will be as per, unless Monday is a statutory holiday, which we go to the Wednesday. So having said all that, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through to Councillor Wilson. Were you suggesting just 1 o'clock at the the winter sessions, or you weren't referring to the summer sessions where we bounce back to 6? We bounce back to 6. No,
I'm referring to
are we
all of
1
them.
o'clock right across?
Sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt.
Okay, then I was reading the old one. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
So I missed that. Can you say, are you saying that?
I was under the impression that we were just doing the 1 o'clock through the winter sessions, the follow winter sessions. But I'm advised that it's 1 o'clock, 12 months out of the year. Okay.
11 months out of the year. Councillor Patterson.
Then for clarification, if you look at the package on page 162, and I think that's where Councillor Wilson has maybe some pointed out, it actually says
does.
in April, May, June, July, August, and September is a meeting start time at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
So that needs to be amended to the 1 p.m.
Yes.
just in our
Good
Perfect.
catch.
for future.
Based on the prior to. Councillor Fraz.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment that one of the things I do like about having the 1 PM in the winter and the 6 PM in summer is it allows that variety for residents who aren't able to attend at the 1 PM or perhaps are working or going to school or so on. So I like that variety in there. Recognizing that one of the reasons for the shift was for staff timing, our timing, the late evenings and so on, the darkness and that for residents as well. But I do see a benefit to 6 PM. I could go for 1 or 6, but I just thought I'd make a comment that I do think there is some value in the 6 PMs as well in the summertime.
Councillor Greer and then Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I thought we'd all agreed that it would be 1 o'clock throughout the year due to the fact of the staff, it takes the staff time and runs overtime when we have it at 6 o'clock. It's pretty late to expect them to stay till 9, 10 o'clock at night. So I thought we had already decided definitely that we were going to stay them at 1 o'clock, and 1 o'clock I think is the best choice.
Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just my comments on that. I prefer the summer hours as well as Councillor Fraz's suggestion. It goes to 6 o'clock, but that's more for the fact that for public participation. Many of our residents work type of thing, and 1 o'clock, like right now, is very difficult for them to actually be in the gallery here. And so the thing is, I know when I was on the other side still working, it was the only time that I was able to come to council meetings. I couldn't come during the day. So I think it's for better public participation. I think it's more fair to go to 6 o'clock, at least in the summer hours. I understand and appreciate why we did it in the winter hours, but in the summer, I think it's a more public participation. And as far as the comment about going to staff overtime and so forth, as I recall previously, staff actually did a sliding scale or a sliding hours on those council nights. So when we had the evening meetings and they started, I believe, at like noon or whatever, or they they picked up some overtime. But the thing is that I believe it's more important that we actually engage the public.
The CAO.
Thank you, if I were, Your Worship. Most staff do not get overtime who attend council meetings. We're all exempt. So we don't, we just stay late and work the extra hours, and it's just part of our job. So we don't get overtime.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I echo Councillor Fraz and Councillor O'Brien for engagement. I feel that it's quite important in this day and age and everything with COVID and Zoom meetings and such. I could either put a motion forward to have the split, or another option is to leave it as 1 o'clock for the final year of this council, and the next council will make their choice on meeting time.
Thank you. Just, I will express my thoughts on this and the fact that we ran for, I think, the first 2 years at 6 o'clock starts. And I would tell you that the number of people in the gallery are probably greater now than they were in the first 2 years. So I'm having a hard time buying in the fact that it draws more people one way or the other. If we do it at night, there are going to be people that are saying you do it I can't go because I have children or I have whatever. And so the day works better. If you do it in the day, you get the opposite part of that argument. So I don't think either one is right or either one is wrong in this situation. The beauty of this is the fact that we do put it on our website and people can watch our meetings. They're not getting any more participation or any less participation by watching it at 6 o'clock at night. If we had it at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it all comes out to be the same anyways. So I don't buy that part of the argument. I think what you have to look at is what is better for staffing. And I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Greer on this one, is that staff are already pushed right to the wall, as we've talked many, many times at this council. And if we look at this and we say, how can we make it a little bit better by not keeping them from 6 o'clock till 9 or 10 o'clock at night would be one area that we could probably make their life a little bit easier. Yes, they get paid for it. Yes, they're exempt, and no, it doesn't cost us any more for overtime or anything like that. But what it does cost is the morale side of it. And I happen to think that the 1 o'clock start, to me, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I mean, it's a 1 block walk, whether it's at 6 o'clock or 1 o'clock, doesn't bother me a bit. But I think for the staff, it's good. I believe that it's been better for the residents. I believe it's been far better for the consultants because they're coming in on their workday rather than at night and having to come in. So I think all over it 1 o'clock seems to be a better time. So I'm going to be in favor of a 1 o'clock if that motion comes forward. Thank you. Sorry, I went on a little longer than I thought. But any other comments? All right. We've already done we've passed this, have we not? Okay, and we're ready to pass this all right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the 3 recommendations? And opposed, sorry. Now, sorry, Councillor O'Brien, we're only doing the recommendations. It's not about the hours at this point in time. Okay, so I was under the impression that Councillor Patterson was going to bring up about the hours next after this was through. Pardon me?
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, the recommendations that per the agenda include the 1 o'clock all the year round. So there would need to be a amendment or a change if that's not what council intends.
But where does it say that?
If I may, in the,
Doesn't say it on here because we know that's wrong.
yeah, the actual schedule attached has the wrong dates from the last time.
Yeah,
But the text,
the report actually on there is not the correct report either, so.
So,
Sorry for the confusion.
all right.
Yeah.
So here's what we've got. We've passed this based on the report, and the report says 1 and 6 o'clock. That's what we've passed at this point in time, according to what I'm hearing. 1 and 6.
if I may, if we read the recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Yes.
unless council just is voting on number 1 or breaking them out. We had a mover and seconder, which I think we thought was for all
3.
4, but we could break them out, and then the mover and seconder we currently have would be just to receive, and you could vote on the other ones separately if you wanted to talk about the times. The time is discussed in number 3.
Yeah, just to clarify, the agenda has the right recommendation. The report attached to the agenda is the outdated report. So the recommendation on the report does not match the agenda package recommendation. So staff's original recommendation was the 3, that the report be received, that the January 3rd and 2 August meetings be canceled, and that the schedule attached be received. So it should be the 1 o'clock all the way through, except that the schedule attached is incorrect because it has the wrong.
Well, yeah, okay, I understand that. I don't mean to drag this out any further, but we approved the schedule that is here. We didn't approve. So we either go back and say everything's 1 o'clock and we make that motion now, or we say we leave it the way it is, which is 1 and 6 o'clock.
1 and 6.
That's why I was bringing it up to Councillor O'Brien, because Councillor O'Brien was voting against this, and I think he was really in favor of this.
Yeah.
But this is the paper that we're dealing with. So let's keep it straight where we're at. So right now, the way it's been through is that we're saying it's 1 and 6 o'clock. Unless somebody wants to make a motion to change that and it's seconded, then this is it. All right, so just before you, hold on for a second, Councillor Greer and Councillor Wilson. Just, I'm going to recall that question so there's no more confusion. So I'm calling the questions for recommendations 1, 2, and 3 the way they are here and with this, all right? So let's make sure we get everybody voting the way they want to vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Wilson, why are you looking befuddled?
Thank you, Your Worship, because Councillor Greer wanted it to be 1 o'clock right through, and now he's just voted against that. So I guess I'm really totally confused.
I don't attest to what Councillor Greer votes
No, and
for.
but I'm just not sure that we're all on the
Well, I
same
thought
page
we
with
tried.
what we're voting on right now.
That's what I just went through. Okay, go ahead. Councillor Greer, just tell me what you think you voted for.
No, I'm totally confused too. And
Okay.
I thought I was voting for 1 o'clock right through.
No.
So what do we have to do? Make an amendment to that motion?
No, what we have to do now is if you want to go 1 o'clock right straight through, then somebody has to make a motion to go to 1 o'clock right through at this point in time. That's what we're doing. But other than that, all right, thank you. How could this get so complicated?
Well,
Okay.
if I could,
Yes,
I think that the first vote we took was misinformation. So it should have been mixed anyway, because we all voted on something that we thought was 1 o'clock. And it wasn't 1 o'clock. So really, even if we voted for it with a different understanding. So that's why I think we should start right over again and forget any amendment or anything else and just,
well, that's what we just did. 1, 2, and 3, which.
well,
is-
maybe our PAO wants to say something because she's
No, I
nodding
don't think
over
she
there.
does.
No, okay.
I
All right,
think-
so do you want me to make this amendment?
Well, I just want to make sure everybody, I don't want any accusations that we didn't vote on what we thought we were voting on. We voted on 1, 2, and 3, and the times for the schedule and the scheduled dates are those that are outlined on this sheet, which is part of
Right.
it. Okay, that's what we voted on. And I got everybody to vote in favor, save and except you, Councillor Wilson, at this point in time. You voted negatively on that.
So I'll make an amendment.
All right.
The,
so
the, the
notice-
meeting stay at 1 o'clock.
Okay, now you're making a new motion. You're not
I
making.
know,
an amendment.
okay, well
You're
then
making
how am
a
I
new
going to,
motion.
all right, so help me amend this then, please.
You want to make a motion that all meetings begin at 1 o'clock.
All
throughout the
right.
year.
Then that's what I'll do.
I need a seconder for that first. All right, wait, let's second it and get it on the floor, okay, before Councillor Greer, I'm assuming, is seconding that. It's on the floor. Councillor Wilson, you have first say.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you brought up a couple of good points, and one of them that is a very valid point is that a lot of the developers coming through do not come. It's inconvenient for them to come at 6. And that's not just, that we're going to see for developers and staff only, but I think the other very valid point that was made is that very few people come either in the evening or in the afternoon, and they can watch it. So the other suggestion that our CAO had is we leave it for the year, which might be a good idea, or Councillor Patterson, I should say, said that we leave it for the year. So I say 1 o'clock just works pretty well for everybody right
Just
now.
as a-
Thank you.
As a point of order,
Yes, you have it.
I don't think this motion could, to amend the time can really take place after we just pass a council resolution that includes the time on it. If it was an intent to change the time, it should have been done as an amendment during the original motion, but this is almost
No.
like doing a reconsideration.
It's not. We're changing we're asking for a change in how things are operated in policy. So they're asking for a change in policy at this point in time. I believe it's a fair deal. Whether it passes or not would be another thing. Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you explained it well in your statement that it's not only looking after staff time, but it's also looking after consultants and developers who might find it difficult to come for a 6 o'clock meeting, having to stay overnight in town and so on and so forth. And also, I agree with you in the crowds. The crowds, number of people we have are very few. And now that we have Zoom and our meetings are recorded, I'm sure everybody can be up to date. So I'm in favor of leaving it at 1 o'clock.
Okay, let's, Councillor O'Brien, then we'll wrap this up. We've talked about it.
So I'm not in favor of doing it 1 o'clock all the way through. And the other reason being is if we do 1 and 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock for the summer sessions, that way you're balancing off for the people in our community that want to attend at the 1 o'clock sessions. They have half the time that they can do that, and the other half the time, the other people that do work for a living that like to come, they have the other half. So that's kind of given a balance to both sides. I'm all about balance, and maybe this would be more fair to everybody.
All right, any other comments? Then I'm going to call the question. So we now have the motion to go to 1 o'clock for all of our meetings for 12 months of the year, actually 11, but 12 months of the year. So all those in favor of going 12 months of the year? Opposed? All right, it fails. We're staying 1 to 6. Mark voted against. Yeah, so that's the way it is. Good. The decision has been made. Thank you very much. Mrs. Kaler, if it's something that is controversial, we're not going to talk about it today. Not joking.
Thank you, Worship, and apologies for the confusion on that one. Hopefully this one's not as confusing. The consultants for the pool project were at the previous council meeting, and this staff report, similar to the Parks Stormwater Master Plan, it provides a link to the full report now, written report from the HDR group. And at this point, we are seeking, as we talked a little bit about during the budget process, we're seeking some further direction from council on what the next steps are for this project. So there has been consultation, kind of formal and informal, in several different methods since 2019. And the most recent consultation was somewhat, I would say, less restrictive than the previous COVID era. So there was some in-person opportunities. And, you know, I would say from a staff perspective, we felt the consultant did make efforts to provide different options and different opportunities for people. But the only thing I would say we would normally have done would have been a large open house. Obviously, we were not able to do that during the COVID restrictions. And so they broke it down into smaller kind of mobile events, as they explained to council. And what we're really looking for today is a little bit of a, I guess, we're at a checkpoint or a touch point where we just need to know what council's wishes are in terms of advancing the project. And then also, as we discussed, we would need some budget for the early first quarter of 2022 if council is giving direction to proceed as planned. And recommendations are just to receive, but we are hoping for some additional direction as well, which may come today or may come at a later meeting, you know, obviously depending on council's will.
Need a motion to receive. Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor Greer. Discussion on receiving. Councillor Patterson, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Worship. My apologies. I'm quite okay with having this be received and that at this point in time. But I will either, and I'm asking for clarification because I would like to put option 1 on the table in the analysis. And the reason for that is that I believe that this project has gone way overboard and it needs to be scaled back for it to continue.
You're making a motion for option?
Yes, I
1?
am.
Yes, yeah, that's where I'm
Okay.
going to go. All right, I'm on receiving. We're on receiving. Can't yet, just hold on to that thought. Yes, all right. So all those in favor of receiving? Opposed? Now, Councillor Patterson, you wish to make another motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Based on the options and the analysis and everything in our package, and that today I'll reiterate that this project is continually going further and further increased in cost. I do not believe that at this point in time, it's required for all the bells and whistles of the project. We know that we can continue and build on in future. And I do believe that the project needs to be scaled back and reviewed.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
I'm seconding that motion, Your Worship. And also, just for clarification, what option 1 says is that council may receive the report for information. Then in the background below, it shows option 1. If council wishes to review this report for information, wishes to receive this report for information, staff will not pursue the project until further direction is received from council. And the reason I'm supporting this is that's exactly what I believe that we need to do. We need to hit the pause button on the pool aquatic center complex. Reason being, first and foremost, is through no fault of the consultants. They did a good job as they could under the circumstances of COVID. But the end results were unsatisfactory. It was not a good input from the public. We had a grand total of 156 people, that were involved with the consultant himself, and so forth. And so that's not a good representation of what the people of Parksville did. The consultants went after the public of Oceanside without any real direction as to what, who and whether the people that were actually providing input would actually be voting in a referendum on them, because we hadn't established the fact of who the people that would be voting on it. And so the thing is that we're getting input from people that had no control over maybe of what this was going to cost. And I feel that at this point, and all I'm suggesting is we take this, push the pause button on it, with the intent that the next council in October 22 pick this up as if they wish to. Don't get rid of the information that we've received so far. There's a lot of good information, a lot of money's been spent, and that could be utilized again. But at this particular time, I don't feel that we should proceed any further, because we're getting into the really big dollar phase now, and I don't think that we're in a good position to make those decisions.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the, pardon me, option 3 says council may choose to proceed with preliminary design, site selection, and final design. I guess my concern would be that we don't have a site. So before we even proceed with a preliminary design, I think it would need to have a site chosen, which, so I'm not sure how that would fit into everything. I understand what Councillor Patterson and O'Brien are saying about this, putting a pause on it, but I'm a little reluctant to put a total pause on it as well. So I'm not sure if perhaps I could ask our CAO, if we did put a pause on it, what kind of financial impact would this have, or what impact period would this have on the project going forward if it were to wait till the fall?
I'm assuming that's coming through the mayor.
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Wilson. So it really, if you make, if council votes to do option 1 today, then you can bring it back at any time. So as soon as a councillor, or I guess the majority of council, wants to do something else, you would just bring it back as an item on an agenda. In terms of cost implications, I guess there's sort of 2 answers. One is that there's no immediate cost implications of doing that. We've already, council has approved the award of the contract for the consultation that has ended. There is some residual account left from WSP, who did some initial studies on the projected site, but that would just stay kind of there, ready to be used by the next council when they do want to look at a site. In terms of big picture costs, obviously everything just gets more expensive, the longer out it is, but that's like a complete unknown at this point. I think that there's nothing that would stop council from having ongoing consultation, doing surveys, directing staff to do other things, sort of outside of a formal massive project. So, really at this point, staff don't have any recommendations because it's almost neutral. Like, it depends on what council wants. So if you want this to be advanced, the preliminary design will help with both, I think, site selection and scope. So they're somewhat chicken and egg, I suppose, because if you decide as a council that you want to do one or the other or phase it, then that has some implications for the size of site and the kind of site that you're looking for. So you would probably want those things to be somewhat linked all the way along so that you get an understanding of what it is the community wants in terms of the scale and the scope, and then that will dictate, obviously, how much land you need. There will be some other things coming before council, things that we have been addressed through different budget processes about other municipal services, so like police, other expanded services. And so perhaps looking at everything in a big picture is something that might assist this council or the next council, whatever council. So at this point, from our perspective or from a staff perspective, we'll make it work whatever council wants. But this is, I guess, a decision point after we've done a few initial steps, and now we need further direction at some stage from you.
Thank you. Councillor Frass. Oh, sorry. Did you
Could I have a follow-up, please?
Yes.
Thank you. And so I guess in looking at this, then if we choose option one, basically we are putting a pause if we want it to be on. So then option one might be the answer for this perhaps. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Frass.
Thank you. To me, I'm not sure exactly what putting the pause or pursuing option one, how that's any different than just receiving this report and not just proceeding beyond, like, giving any direction otherwise to staff. I don't see really the use of a motion for option one. This project, while it's had some hiccups along the way, or maybe not everything we expect it to be, I don't see a project as big as a pool in our community being something we'd expect to get a hole in one on. And it does take a lot of work. And as our CEO mentioned, it's kind of a chicken or egg. How are we gonna find a site if we don't know what we're gonna put there? How do we know what we're gonna put there if we don't know where to put it? And recognizing that the site has already been our biggest roadblock issue, I think that's what we need to pursue as the complication or challenge to get over. So I think what we should be doing at this point is reevaluating what our site options are and recognizing that might mean looking outside what we own, what we can pursue, and what the community would be willing to go for a pool site. As far as putting on pause, though, again, the pool in the community, recreation in the community, it's not going to go away over time. It's only going to become more and more of a need. It's, as mentioned, the cost is just going to continue to escalate as time goes on, as we've seen the last couple of years. So I don't think it's something that's ever going to really go away. Recognizing too, this is far beyond just a Parksville pool issue. This is something that would absolutely service our entire region. You've seen those kind of comments from, I know at the Oceanside Service Committee, even directors of other areas, they recognize that the residents would be coming to Parksville, as they already do for many services too. So the conversation already at the RDN has been to, shall we keep the lines of communication open with Parksville to see how we can contribute to it? Because this need goes far beyond our own community. I do think we have to keep continuing in some regard. So if this is just going to, put a pause, but at any time we can, bring it back to give staff direction, I think we need to consider what that next step would be. And in my opinion, it's pursuing that site selection. So maybe this should really be going to a committee of whole, where we could then discuss and get a recommendation to council of what that next step is going to be, because there is going to be a next step.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Frass pretty well took everything that I was going to mention. I think we have to continue. We've put a lot of money into this project, and I hate to put good money in after bad. So I'd like to continue this, but I think the big stumbling block has been the location of the property. If we had a really good location, I think this would go quite smoothly. So I think the first step is to look at the type of property that we require. as far as the drawings and everything that has been done so far, I think it's been excellent. And that's something we don't have to redo. So I think waiting longer is just going to cost more money. And I think we're down this road now, and I don't see it, that we should be stopping or pausing at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to speak to this first, Councillor Patterson, then you can speak after me if you wish. First off, I'm really surprised. This council was the one that criticized the most of all previous councils about kicking the can further down the street and giving it to somebody else to handle. And here we are doing exactly the same thing as what we were criticizing for when we first were elected. As far as the increase in costs, how do we know? We don't even know what we've talked about. I mean, the public hasn't come out and said, this is a swimming pool, this is a going to be a community center. Nobody has come up with the final thing. So I don't know how we can even suggest that the costs are out of control at this point in time, because we don't know that. The public, if they wanted to speak to this, have been given numerous opportunities, and we had very little public participation. Yes, that's a disappointment. Would it have been any different any other way? Probably not. We would have still had the 60 to 100 people coming out and doing that. That is just the way it is. My read on this is that the people are happy with the way it's going right now. They didn't have anything to complain about, so that they just left it go forward. That assumption is just as strong as the assumption that people didn't want it, so they didn't speak about it. So we don't know that. And yes, when we get all of the facts and figures together, then the intent has always been to have these bigger town hall meetings and discuss it. But right now, we don't have anything to discuss. They're going to ask us, how much is it going to cost? Well, we don't know what we're going to build. Where's it going to go? Well, we don't know where it's going to go. We don't have those answers yet. And by kicking the can further down the street, we will never get those answers. So until we get those, it's not fair to say that we should be waiting on this. That's just, in my mind, that's just not good governance. You have to have some managerial courage in this and make the right decisions that move this project forward or get rid of it altogether. But right now, the population, 67% of the population has said that they want this swimming pool, according to the polls that I've seen on it. So 67% said they want it, then let's keep moving forward. Why do you want to cancel it at this point in time, or put a block up at this point in time? Give it to the next council to have. Who said that? The 20 people that complain in Facebook all the time after time about everything that we do? No. Let's listen to what the public is saying. And if they're not saying anything, that means to me that we're doing the right job. And if we are doing the right job, then let's keep moving forward. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your
Oh,
Worship.
I'm sorry. Councillor Chandler hasn't spoken yet. My apologies.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a comment to council that through the mayor, I fully support continuing forward on this. I think that City of Parksville needs a pool and an aquatic center. I think it's, as we grow, we're going to need these services to manage almost a new group of people that are going to be coming in over the next 10 years. We've got to look at this as a 10-year out program, because we're going to have a lot more younger families coming in, a lot more people relocating from Vancouver and different areas. And although that sometimes puts a strain on things, it also really helps our youth and our younger population find a lot of things to do that are wholesome and keep them really busy. So that's what I'd like to say. I agree that, we have to keep continuing on looking at a site proposal, site location. It could be that we find the perfect place, but we need to always be looking for that land, and we need to secure that first and foremost, and then we can move forward even beyond that. So I fully support continuing on with the project.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson now, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I greatly appreciate the comments around the table. Option one stated To receive the report for information, staff will not pursue the project until further direction is received from council. So Councillor Fraz mentioned it quite well, and that about having committee of the whole meeting, which I think is definitely a wish for, so that we can have adequate conversation. The mayor spoke quite passionately and a bit emotionally, and that as well. The Councillor Chandler spoke about the future need of our population, and that's absolutely for sure. Our CAO mentioned scale and scope, and I think if we had sight, those are those 3 S's that are dramatically needed at this point. So while I've put that option 1 on the table, it definitely meant that we would have further direction towards staff. So if I could add to option 1, that we have a committee of the whole meeting in the not too distant future and make the direction more adequately finalized.
Go on.
Sorry,
I'm
if I may,
sorry.
Your Worship.
I'm pondering Councillor Patterson. I apologize for the delay. I'm trying to think what we, don't mean it to sound the way it'll come out, but what it accomplishes by having a committee of the whole meeting versus what we're doing right now. I understand that, and I'm not disputing that might not be a good idea. I'm just trying to think it through. That's all. So my apologies for the delay on that.
Sorry, if I may, Your Worship, I was just going to ask for some clarification if that was an amendment to Councillor Patterson's original motion.
As Councillor Patterson, if she wants to amend her.
I would like to amend it that this motion be put forward to a committee of the whole to have a wholesome discussion and a little bit more direction available towards staff.
And I believe Councillor O'Brien was the seconder, and so if that's agreeable.
If I may, through your worship.
You may. Thank you.
Clarification on the revised proposed motion would also, option 1 was just to receive it, but it also said, as I said in the background, would not pursue the project until further direction is received from council. Well, so wouldn't that just be up to council just to say, if we go for option 1, that council, any one of us, can put through a motion to take this into committee of the whole. All that this options are, is my understanding here, is to provide staff with some direction as what the feeling is where we're going to go. So what we're doing is we said, okay, we'll receive this report. We're going to give staff direction which way we're going to go by putting it through a recommendation for a committee of the whole. As CEO Kaler already said, staff or council at any time from now on can say, here's what we want to do, whether it's like, we want to set up a committee of the whole for site selection. That's what we have the ability to do, and we can continue to do that. Or the thing is that, you know, that seems to be the put in the cart, not before the horse, we recognize, as Councillor Francis mentioned. So if that is the intent, I think that all of us have that ability to do that, to go into committee of the whole. As the mayor was pondering there, you know, what good is that? Because we can do that at any time. So I'm not sure it has to be part of that motion, is all I'm getting at. If CO Kaler corrects me if I'm incorrect in my assumption here, but could we not go to, even if we pass option 1, CO Kaler, could we not at any time go into committee of the whole for a specific purpose of a moving the pool forward?
I'm assuming that comes
I said that first. I did.
I'm just giving you the hard time.
I
Go
did.
ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, through you to all of council, I guess. So there's 2 things. There's, at any time, you're right that council can vote to go into committee. One of the benefits of having a scheduled committee of the whole for something of this magnitude is that you can have a staff report come forward. It can be publicized to the community that there's going to be a committee of the whole. It allows other people to make submissions to council specifically for that purpose. So there's, two different ways of doing the committee of the whole. Technically speaking, you've already received the report for information. So if you don't pass another motion, we're not doing anything else. We're basically
We've done number one.
pausing or holding, and that's already been done. It is valuable, though, I will say, to have extra clarity on this big issue, that if council wants to essentially refer this to a committee of the whole, it is helpful to have that, even though maybe it's a bit of a redundant motion because you can call for committee of the whole at another time. I think because it's such a big thing and we want the public to understand, is something happening? If something's happening, when? What is actually happening? That having the extra kind of motion or the extra resolution is helpful. And then it also allows us to understand as staff, like, are we just going into committee with no background documents for you and nothing kind of formal? Or do you want us to actually kind of, come back with some different options and that sort of thing? So it's a little bit more of a formal committee of the whole, if you know what I mean. So hopefully that helps clarify.
I thank you through your worship.
Yes, please.
A follow-up. That is helpful to consider Councillor Patterson's alteration of the motion anyways. I would, as seconder, I would approve that.
Okay, so we now have an amendment to the motion. And that's what we're going to be discussing from here for this part. So discussion on it. Councillor Patterson, you're the one that started it. Do you want to continue?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. My question is through you to our CEO. How much notice would staff appreciate to have a committee of the whole, and what do I require information at this point in time or direction to give towards staff to bring forward, such as the site and the scope and the scale?
If I may, Your Worship, obviously as much notice as possible is helpful, but I would suggest that probably in sort of mid-February would be sufficient time for staff to, we're actually in a meeting later today, we're going to be talking a little bit about city lands. But I think this council has already received a list a couple of years ago of city-owned lands that we already have. But I think by mid-February, there'd be sufficient time for members of the public to reach out to you. We don't obviously want to make it too short of a time frame so that people feel like they have to write to you on Christmas Day or something. But I think having 6 weeks mid-February timeframe would allow us to come back with some materials for council. We could certainly take suggestions from council at the December meeting or the January meeting if there's something specific that you want, like a specific piece of research. But to me, that sounds like a doable timeframe, kind of mid-February in between the two council meetings, perhaps.
All right. No more discussion. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, as a second, right?
All right, go ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I appreciate what CEO Keller is just for clarification. Certainly mid-February, end of February is very doable, and I think would be sufficient time to get some public input as well. Basically, because we have already, we're talking, we understand, we identify that site selection is going to be kind of key. It has to be definitely a part of this committee of the whole. But the thing is that council has already passed a resolution prior to do a brownfield restoration grant application for one of the possible sites that was previously identified by the consultants for the aquatic center. So we've already got that kind of in the process that is helpful. So we are still moving forward, so to speak, with the possibility of locating another site, which I think is important that we're doing so. I think committee of the whole at this point, including site selection, would be favorable. Thanks.
For me. Yeah, I got her. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, great. This sounds great to me. I'm really happy about this. As far as the sites, one of the conversations we had way back where we had a very informal discussion about sites. So this may not have to be made now is to be included in this motion that Councillor Patterson is making. But I think it would be really helpful if not only does staff have all the sites that are available, but also that we have that freedom to discuss some of other sites that perhaps we discussed in that casual meeting we had. So that, and also sites that might even be, that we may have to purchase. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're getting off track here. Let's bring it back in. We have an amendment on the floor to adjust the motion that says that we call a committee of the whole meeting sometime in, well, what sometime? We haven't picked a date yet, but, well, see, I wrote January the 11th, but that was just, there's a whole bunch of just allowing a few. I really do like the idea of this, the committee of the whole. If we go out to the public and all respect to the public and everything, all we're going to do is we're going to get the same 3 or 4 sites that we've done. I think it's going to take more defined work to get us down to 1 or 2 picks of good sites in the community. And I think that's where we all have to come to the table and start to have those conversations. You know, we've heard from the community and it's the same sites that, you know, we've had conversations about over a while. I think there's other sites that are available that, or could be available that need to be looked at. So what I'd like to do is spend some time on that and have this. I do like the idea of having a committee of the whole meeting. Do I like waiting until February? No, of course not. But, you know, the logic of it says that we do have to speak to, and maybe we can take 2 seconds and have this conversation. If we think this is the biggest priority we have in the next 60 days, then we got to tell staff that it's okay to push some of the stuff off for 60 days or 30 days or whatever, so that they can have the time to work on this, because they're going to need time to get us the information we need. I don't think anything that I've read coming from HDR told us what sites we're looking at. I was actually, if I had a disappointment in what they did, that was probably the one thing. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that disappointment that I was hoping that it was going to come back to 2 or 3 sites in the town, but we didn't get there with it. So if we do it, I'd like to do it for sites, because I heard it from Councillor Fraz, Councillor O'Brien, a number of people around the table, that, you know, we've got to pick the site, and they're absolutely right. You got to know what you got. If you got a 5-acre site, that dictates how big your building is going to be. If you got a 10-acre site, that dictates how big your building can be. There's a whole bunch of questions that get automatically answered once you start with that. So, and, you know, it also will dictate the price of the building and so on, because if we have to pay $11 million for a site, or if we have to pay $1.98 for a site, there's 2 differences there. So that we have to look at that. I would suggest that I'm going to support the idea of the amendment where we go with the committee of the whole, but we need to specify a date. So let's put a target date of February 15th as being the target date. If everybody's agreed upon that, then it's a lot easier to work with. Whatever date that can work out around the 15th. Go this side of the 15th, not that side. Can do, I don't care. Yeah,
Sorry.
Valentine's Day,
Oh, is it really? Oh, well.
it's my daughter's birthday, so.
Yeah, I think that if council would be all right with, we'd have the normal council meetings on there is a stat in that month though now, I think, but
21st.
okay, so we would try to pick the Monday in between the 2 council meetings if that's possible. That's the 14th, all right. So
Is everybody reasonably close in agreement with that? 14th? Yeah, 1 o'clock. We can still take our wives out. Thank you. That was coming up later, wasn't it? Yeah, thank you, Doug. Pardon? No, the the week before? Okay, as long as the dates work, I don't care, but that's. All right, let's go for there. Is everybody all right with that? Well, the week of the 14th, whatever works in that time for all of us. All right? Let's vote on that. You kind of circumvented, pardon me? The amendment, that's right. All those in favor of the amendment? Unanimous. All right, now, all those in favor of the amended motion? We'll get there. Honestly, we're going to get there. It's unanimous. Thanks, folks. It's amazing when we all work together on stuff, we can get this kind of stuff done. So thank you. All right, that gives us some direction for staff then, right? There you go. All right. Next. Bylaws, first reading, zoning development amendment bylaw 2021, number 2000.132, a map amendment to. Point of
Your
order.
worship, if I may.
Didn't we put this off?
I requested earlier that this item be deferred to a future.
Oh, did you?
meeting.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Marked it on the one page, but not the other. All right. That's the only bylaw we have. Motions from previous meetings, we're clear on. Notice of motion. I'm putting forward a motion that we can consider today, that staff be directed to prepare a report for council to be presented in the next 6 months that outlines the options and implications of a bylaw preference clause in the city purchasing policies. Let me explain. I need a seconder for that, and then we can have the conversation. Councillor Greer, thank you. I just want to explain where I come up with this. Every chance I get, wherever, anything that I'm writing, it's always, hey, you got to support our local business people. You've got to buy local. You've got to, keep our economy going locally. And I'm looking at it, and we're not following what we preach in every opportunity. And all I want to know is, what can we do to get to that point where, even if it's a couple percentages more expensive to buy something from a local business than from somebody from out of town or out of country, I would really like to be able to say that we can get there. And right now I can't say that. So I would like to have staff prepare some kind of a report. And I've put out here, in the next 6 months, if it was the next 9 months, I would be just as happy, because I think it's something we've got to look at. We've got to look at it carefully. So anyways, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree wholeheartedly. I thought we actually did have a buy local type policy in effect, but what piqued my interest and everything is maybe when we're doing an RFP or something else specific that we assign. So this is a suggestion to your motion for staff to look at a point structure. So if they are local in the Oceanside area, they receive a 50-point bonus kind of thing. So that although they may score higher or lower depending on the cost or what they've budgeted for in a project, they would score higher based on the points that they're a local. So just a suggestion towards staff.
Okay.
And then through you to the mayor, through the mayor to our CAO. Did we have a previous policy in effect before?
Go ahead.
If I may, Your Worship, we have an outdated purchasing policy, which we're working on updating at the moment to bring back to council in the near future. And in fact, we might kind of wait now until we have time to do this, add this in as well. Our current policy is outdated in that it doesn't correctly reference the trade agreements that we're bound by, especially when we're getting funding from senior governments. We have been told that it is actually illegal to have a local preference, but there are some programs where we could essentially put this in, but they're basically the social procurement programs. So there's a few, actually some of our neighbors around us have been following that kind of approach for some time. So what we would need to do is have some advice from some of our counterparts as to how they've made it work, and then probably get some legal advice in terms of making sure we don't put ourselves in a liability situation when we're doing big bids or contracts, and then come back to council with essentially a new program that is legal, that meets all of our obligations, that provides for fair bidding, but does have a recognition of the broader community benefits of using local or regional folks that are essentially paying for the taxes. So it would be quite a fairly big project, but thanks to council, we do have some additional support and finance, and I think 6 months we could certainly bring back some options for you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just, as a former purchasing agent in another life I had, what CAO Kaler said is very true. The municipal chart is very specific on procurement policies. It has great merit locally, but the thing is that there are other procurement policies set up by other cities. I think that we could certainly take a page out of. I know my compatriots, I was a private buyer, they were public buyers, but we attended the same courses. And they're very specific on what they could do and what they couldn't do. And part of the basis was a point basis, as Councillor Patterson referred to, and that can be effective, but at the same time, you still have to abide by the rules. However, that has now been circumvented by social procurement policy, which has a tendency to override in some cases, that which may achieve exactly what I believe you're trying to do, Mayor May, which is worthy. So I think if we pursue it from a social procurement policy standpoint, I think we could probably make some headway. So it's a great idea. We got to proceed legally. Thank you.
All right. Did I have a seconder? Did I get a second? No. Al, yeah, okay. Then I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. New business. Here we go. This is speaking to that a recommendation. I need to move in a seconder for a recommendation that council authorize attendance for each of its members at the Local Government Leadership Academy Leadership Forum Conference in February in Richmond, BC, and that the cost be taken from our contingency, from the council contingency. I need to move in a seconder for that. Councillor Fraz and Councillor O'Brien. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Just a reminder that our next regular council meeting will be December the 20th at 1 p.m. And now I need to move her in a seconder to pursuant to section 91A, E, K, and L of the Community Charter to proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality, acquisition and disposition of land, negotiations of proposed provision for municipal service, and discussions with municipal officers for the purposes of preparing annual report. So I need to move into a seconder for that. Councillor Fraz, Councillor Greer, all those in favor? That's 5 minutes. Let's go at 2:50 and for the meeting. Okay, thank you.